Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. This week, we are joined by the wonderful Shaun Shirazian from Lodgify. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bart. Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure to have you on the show. You are the new CEO of Lodgify. You've been in the role for roughly around about 5 months. You've got a very impressive history on LinkedIn that I've had a look over. And when I guess it was your team or that reached out to me and said, "Hey, Bart, you should talk to Shaun. He's an amazing chap. He's doing some cool things." I really jumped at the chance. I really wanted to get to know you and hear your story, your vision, and also learn a bit more about how you get the job of a CEO, especially in this industry. So first off, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate you being here. Look, maybe open it up for us a little bit. I've told everyone what you're doing now, but tell everyone a little bit about who Shaun is and what your background is.
Yep. I mean, so much of who I am is a function of where I grew up and where my parents are from. So I grew up in Dallas, Texas, in the U.S., but first generation American. So both my parents are from Iran. They were born and raised there, and they left Iran at an early age in search of a better life, and came to raise their family in the US. And so I grew up with this kind of multicultural experience of the traditional stereotype, what you could think of growing up in Texas may be like, combined with the Persian culture. And it was that dichotomy that was so influential in kind of who I am now as a person. But yeah, I spent a lot of my youth and my university and post-university time in the U.S., but now I've been 10 years outside of the U.S. So 3 years in Brazil and now 7 years in London. And we're on the cusp of moving to Barcelona in the next few months as a family.
That's a cool little journey that you've had all over the world. I'm a little bit jealous that you get to be in London and now moving to Barcelona, like such interesting and eclectic cities, and I guess quite a big contrast with Texas. But going back to your formative years, because we'll talk a little bit about what you've been up to and what you've been doing and what it takes to be recruited as a CEO. But your family being from Iran, I assume that financially, when you were growing up, you guys just didn't have an awful lot. That was what my background was like. We had no money whatsoever. It was the $100 in a suitcase type scenario.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't connect the dots on this at the time, but it's only kind of later in life that you connect the dots. And especially when I had my first daughter, I've got two young girls now. It was kind of when I was doing a lot of reflecting back on my own childhood and what it was like. And, one of the things that I realized and am now so incredibly grateful for is the courage that it takes as an immigrant to leave the country that you grew up in, to leave the culture that you grew up in search of a better life for your own family or your future family. And that's exactly what my dad and mom did many years ago. And the courage that takes, the selflessness that takes is absolutely incredible. And it was because of their sacrifices that my brother and I were able to grow up in a country like the US that despite our own living situation, there was plenty of opportunity around us. And so I saw that life kind of firsthand, the life of an immigrant. But the other thing that was super influential for me in those formative years was my dad was a small business owner.
Hmm.
So originally, kind of my dad came to the U.S. to study physics and nuclear engineering. So he got his PhD in nuclear engineering. And the
Right.
plan was to go back to Iran to be a professor and work for the nuclear energy program of Iran. And then the revolution happened. And so instead of doing that, he ended up having to stay in the U.S. And ended up being a small business owner with a friend of his selling Persian rugs. And so kind of a 180 when it comes to career path. And I remember he would travel a lot for work, and I would, as a young kid, travel with him. And I saw firsthand like the highs and lows of owning your own business. And there's like a lot of parallels between being a small business owner and being an immigrant, right? The same kind of selflessness, the same sacrifices, the same courage that it takes with both of those identities. And both of those roles that I saw growing up played a tremendous role in kind of my later years.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating. It really is. It really forms who you are and creates a path for you that you kind of follow, but you might not be completely aware of it. And I know that when you're a kid and you're seeing all this stuff, you know this kind of happening, but it kind of just is the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't know anything other than that, right? And again, it isn't until kind of later in life that you start to reflect more and you connect the dots more and you look around yourself more. You have more experiences that you start to realize one, like how grateful you are for everything they've done for you, but then how that has influenced your own personal purpose and what are the things that fire you up and that you're passionate about as you're thinking about your career and your own personal life as
Mm.
well.
And that the other thing is the bravery. When I talk to my family about what they got up to, or my parents when they were in their 20s, what they were getting up to better their lives and to improve things, it's just remarkable the kind of things that you'd never even think about doing now. You know, turn up. They went to the States with a phone number that someone had given them, and like no cash at all or barely anything, and hoping that that person will, you know, give them food and board and that it will kind of work itself out. And then even when they call that person is not someone they knew, but it was an acquaintance of an acquaintance. And you're just kind of hoping that they're going to help you out. So the stories are really incredible of that resilience and that ability to take risk, which I think it is, like you said, it's only later on that you really figure it out of that bravery that's actually required. Do you think that that's something that you practice in your life, or that you've had to practice in your career to get you to where you are today?
Yeah. I wish I could say I had this clarity at the beginning of my career and these dots that I just kind of shared that I've connected. I knew from the beginning, but it wasn't the case, right? It's only over time that through kind of reflection and thinking back and through kind of getting older and wiser that I come to this clarity. And at the beginning, early years of my career, I knew there was something that about the upbringing that I had that definitely was influential. And I think the piece that I figured out early in my life around like what was it about what I saw and experienced growing up in this household that really kind of like struck a chord with me emotionally and kind of like fired me up from a passion standpoint. And it was this notion of the underdog, right? It was this notion of David versus Goliath, in that the identity of an immigrant, the identity of a small business owner was the underdog. It was somebody that had the odds stacked against them and was kind of fighting against gravity, against these forces. And there was something about that that just fired me up. And now looking back at my career and the places and companies and products that I worked on where I was so passionate, it's when they were serving a customer group that had these similarities. So whether it was at Intuit and QuickBooks, who were serving really the small businesses, or Pipedrive, who also focus on small businesses, or now Lodgify, who's really focused on the long tail. Like it
Mm.
has this element of the underdogs, those that are overserved and underlooked, and how through technology, we can help give them an upper hand, give them an edge, and help level that playing field.
Yeah, fascinating. And I got really excited by looking at your LinkedIn profile. Everyone, make sure that you have a little squiz. Hopefully, you'll see the views go up of it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of the products that you're working or that you've worked on have been about helping smaller business owners and coming up with really creative, practical solutions that are really going to make a difference for them. And both companies I know very well. I know that when we were looking for our CRM system, we did look at Pipedrive. So you would have been there actually whilst we were on the hunt. Didn't use Pipedrive, sorry. But an interesting one because you've spent so many years in kind of following that journey or that mission in terms of these products that you've chosen to work on and dedicate yourself to. So tell me about that sort of the dedication and that keen interest in really making a difference in people. It goes beyond just having a job, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's both kind of professionally and personally. And the thing that I learned early on that has just been so beneficial is the practice of reflection. It's the practice of deep thought. It's the practice of mindfulness. And so oftentimes early on in kind of my career, I would do this kind of like think back on the last couple of years or the last role I had and what were the things that really fired me up? What were the things that were drains on my energy? What was the common elements or ingredients that they shared? And like by constantly doing that reflection practice, it just helped me continue to refine the focus of those areas that I'm going to be more fired up. And then eventually that through that art and practice of reflection, it enabled me to craft my own personal kind of purpose statement, which then, transcends just my personal life, but also extends into my professional life. Because ultimately, the platform I have in my career, the purpose I have here is the same as I have on the personal side. It's
Mm,
just the medium I'm practicing it looks a little bit different. And so that was transformative for me when I kind of was doing these reflections and refining the focus. And then from that, crafting my purpose.
yeah. So when did that sort of part of your journey start, and when did you start to realize that figuring your own head out is kind of a fundamental step in you building a path that's going to suit you?
Yeah, it was in my early 20s. So I interned at Procter and Gamble in the US out of university and started with them full time. And the first job I had at a university with them was in IT, and I absolutely hated it. Even though my degree was in information systems, so a combination of computer science and business, the role I just found very dry, not like customer backed, wasn't exciting, wasn't innovating. And it was immediately kind of like when I was faced with an experience like that was like, okay, well, I'm not going to go 20 plus years doing something that I don't get excited about and don't love. And so I immediately was like, okay, what are the things that I don't like about this? And then I saw that a lot of my friends were in marketing and doing the brand management work at P&G, which they're known for. And I was like, oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds fun. And it was so customer backed. And so I saw that kind of struck a chord with me. And so made the connections to then immediately move into brand management at P&G. And G. And it was from there that I really kind of saw the excitement and passion line up. But what I was missing that I didn't know at that time was this underdog platform. P&G was big brands, mass market. And so it was missing the technology piece that I also was passionate about. And so it was like, there's still something missing. And the connection for me was the founder of Intuit, Scott Cook, started his career at P&G and sat on P&G's board of directors. And so when I was there, you oftentimes heard about stories of Intuit and how it was this incredible tech company that was very customer centric, was very innovative, but really focused on giving common people, whether they're consumers or small businesses, powerful technology that was incredibly easy to use. And then it was like, oh, this is the place I want to go to. And it's based in California. Who doesn't love California? I was living in, Cincinnati,
Living the
Ohio, the
dream.
Midwest. No offense to those in the Midwest, but I had to get to warmer weather and the beach.
Yeah, beautiful. Because now you're moving to Barcelona, so I feel like you're doing the same thing. No offense to everyone in London. I spent many, many years there. Great city, but you're moving back to the warm weather, which is going to be wonderful. Look, I appreciate those words about finding the David versus Goliath, and I think that when I think about leadership and growing and that sort of thing, having purpose is incredibly important. And you seem to have found yours earlier on and kind of carried that through. I don't want to spend too much time on the Intuit path. I'm sure there's elements that we can bring back into the story, but then you were at Pipedrive for a bit and most likely continued that story and that journey of like CRM is a super, super David versus Goliath type of product because you can do so much with it. Just as ChatGPT and AI is right now, it can help anybody do anything that they want as long as they can think of it. That would have been a pretty interesting role. Also, chief product officer. Pipedrive would have been around for a while, so not just startup mode. They probably would have had some cash as well. And then it's like, hey, let's create some more vision and drive it forward. Tell me about that, and then how that kind of also helped to place your philosophy and get you into the CEO role, because we really want people to understand mindset to then be able to progress into the CEO type role.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so when I joined Pipedrive, they definitely were in scale up mode. A year or two earlier, they had just officially, achieved unicorn status, so valued over a billion dollars, and so definitely in scale up mode, high growth mode. Incredible company, and one of the things that really attracted me to them again was this David versus Goliath story. So the origin story of Pipedrive was that unlike a lot of the traditional CRM players that were around when they came in, which was a very competitive space, even back, 10 years ago plus when they started, was that instead of focusing on the needs of the sales manager or the IT manager or the VP of sales or the CEO, they said, you know what, this tool is for the sales rep, is for the sales, the SDR, the BDR. And so we need to make a product that is so easy to use, so delightful to use, that the sales rep will want to go into it. Because up until that point, all the software was for the manager, for reporting
Mm-hmm.
capabilities, so they could understand how the pipeline was looking. And none of the sales reps wanted to use that software. And so you had this issue of, could you trust the data? Is the pipeline up to date? And the sales manager is trying to like force that. And so it was not a good place to be. And they said, you know what, we're going to flip that on its head and we're going to go after the actual user of the product. And they made an incredibly easy to use product in Pipedrive. And that led to its growth for those 10 plus years. Was primarily product led growth, primarily organic, which was incredible. And so when I joined, it had this history and this legacy that was incredible. And so for me and the team, it was like, how do we harness that, right? How do we double down on our strengths and our core that has been so true to us for these years, but then now kind of take it to a whole nother level. And so this was the primary goal during the time at Pipedrive. And again, incredible product, one that has been exclusively focused on the small business segment of the market, and has done incredibly well there. And again, so kind of had that David versus Goliath element. And to your second question on the CEO role, look, I knew early on, as I said, kind of in even going back to seeing my dad as a small business owner, that I eventually wanted to get into the ownership seat. And it was something about, being able to make those decisions, being able to craft strategy for a company, getting the followership and building a team that was really exciting. And so I knew that eventually I wanted to get into that sort of role. And when I came into the technology space, so at Intuit and at Pipedrive, in tech, product and product roles play a really critical role because ultimately the company is the product. What you're selling is the product. And I love that aspect of the craftswomanship of building that comes with product, and how that plays a huge advantage. And when you're in an ownership position or a leadership position, having that background, because ultimately everything rests on that. And so I knew eventually I wanted to get to that position. Product was a great track and one that I naturally had affinity to and passion for. And so for me, it was like continuing to sharpen my craft in product up to the executive level. And then at that point, looking to kind of branch and get into a CEO role. And, just one step back before I joined Pipedrive, I had kind of left my specialty of product, and my last role of Intuit was a general manager position. So it was a commercial role, leading a sales and marketing team.
Mm.
We were leading the emerging markets business for QuickBooks. The plan was actually to move to Australia. So I was based in London at the time, and
Yeah, right.
the role was based in Australia. We were going to move out there. Then COVID happened. It kept on getting delayed. And then the Pipedrive opportunity came up. And so, things kind of took a turn, but I knew I eventually still wanted to get back to that ownership type role.
Fascinating. Help me break it down for people. There's a whole bunch of skill sets that are really required when we're looking to be a CEO. We've got strategy, we've got leadership, we've got product, and all these different elements that come into it. So, I mean, the role is even more complicated than where you are right now, but you pick up these skill sets along the way. When we're talking about product, so we're talking about the technology, the things that people are actually using, and you'll have companies that have 20, 30, 40 different products and product managers managing those products. And then within that, you're managing the product, and then you've got key stakeholders that you're speaking to. So you've got the people using the product, you've got the people that are building the product, and sort of managing everything in between there. And that's kind of one side of it that you said is really useful, is understanding how that works. And I'll ask you in a second to help break that down for people, and what are those skills within the product to kind of really help them progress to within their own companies. And we've all got our own products to sell. And the other part of it is the human side, which you said at the end there is becoming the manager and just managing lots of people. And even within product, being a manager, you're managing. So can you tell me about that product side and what people can take from that skill set that you thought was quite useful and necessary to then get into more of a CEO type role?
Yep. Yep. The approach to product building that I've found the most helpful and the most influential in my career that still serves me in this role of CEO is design thinking, the framework of design thinking, which is really a framework for how to solve problems where there's a lot of unknown. It was created from IDEO and back in the day on when you're faced with a challenge or a problem where there's a lot of unknowns, how do you approach that? And there's three fundamental principles of design thinking that you can apply not only in product, but as a CEO, as a husband, as a father, whatever role you're playing, whatever hat you're playing at the time. The first is deep customer empathy. The second is going broad and narrow on how you could solve the problem. And the third is rapid experimentation, getting something out in the wild as quickly as possible, learning, iterating, and going through that cycle as quickly as possible. This framework of design thinking and these three principles, for me, are at the heart of building amazing products and at the heart of being a CEO, at the heart of any role, because ultimately you're always faced with problems and challenges. And so what is the framework? What is the mental model that you're going to apply to approach that? And so if we kind of take that and take a click down on that for product, customer obsession and this point about deep customer empathy is critically important, especially, in the cases at Intuit and even at Pipedrive, where I wasn't the customer, right? I wasn't a small business owner. I wasn't a sales rep. I didn't have my own business, at that time. And so for me to really empathize, to experience the pain points of the customer that I'm serving, I have to go above and beyond that. And it's not just surveys and it's not just interviews that help you do that. It is true kind of ethnographic style research where you are observing your customer in the wild, them doing their business, going about their day, doing the jobs to be done, so to speak, that they're doing related to your product. And what are the things that get in their way? Observing that firsthand, there's no substitute to that. And if I apply that deep customer obsession in the role of a CEO, where I am not only leading our product leader and the other leaders across the team, it's the same thing. Having deep customer empathy, in this case, employee empathy, is critically important. So if our CFO comes to me and is like, hey, Shaun, I've got a challenge in this particular area, or how should we think about this? I need to first kind of understand the pain point deeply, understand what is going on, where is this person coming from, what is the actual pain that's happening, so that I can then help figure out together how we can solve that. And so this framework of design thinking has been incredibly helpful on this path of product, and then also in leadership. And it has this human element. Like the first part of it is empathy, which is incredibly human.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So useful. And I think for anyone that's listening, what we're doing is opening up a little box where people can start to dig into it and start to look into it and go, cool, there's some cool ideas. And very often that when I'm interviewing leaders, they always talk about the customer and being obsessed with the customer. And I think Jeff Bezos is one of the most famous, even Steve Jobs as well, right? Just talking about the customer, the customer, the customer over and over and over again. And they've done very well with that from a philosophy point of view. And I'm sure that you'll be carrying that through. The other part of it, of course, are the design philosophy, but then talking about people management and that sort of thing, I think that we can take some of those learnings, but there is so much unexpected that you've got to really look at yourself as well, right? When you're managing people and leading and showing them a path and a way and that sort of thing. I assume that you would have thought that that's quite important for you to have those skills when you're jumping into this role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's critically important. And if I go back to when I first became a manager, and the transition from an individual contributor to a manager, which I think, regardless of the career track you're in, is one of the hardest jumps to make, because you go from being the specialist, being the crafts person, and again, whatever function it is, to now needing to lead through others, which is incredibly difficult, because your product, so to speak, is no longer the product. Your product is the people. And I say that oftentimes with people here at the company, which is, oftentimes you think, oh, the CEO is such a powerful role and it's got all this, empowerment with the role. It actually isn't. Like, it's probably, you could argue, one of the least powerful roles in the company, because ultimately everything I have to do, I'm doing through others. I'm leading through others, right? And there's an element of that, which is, you have to really understand that, and that your product no longer is the product itself, and the product is the people. And if I think about what has helped me on the people side, that actually is a common framework for on the customer side or on the product side. It's this notion of thinking about things future back, right? And so ultimately, if you're going to this point of deep customer empathy, or employee empathy in this case, and you're leading a team, one of the things you have to understand is, why is that person here, right? What does this role mean to this person and their career and their purpose in life? And ultimately, where are they trying to get to in their career? Right? Because oftentimes it's easy to think about, well, this is what I need from this person, right? I need this person to deliver this.
Mm,
These are their
sure.
KPIs, these sorts of things. But that's a very self-centered way of looking at things. And if you said, take a step back, you say, hey, Bart, you're here, part of the team. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about where you want to get to eventually. What is your ideal state role? You want to be a CEO? Would you want to be whatever it may be? And then let's work backwards from that to say, okay, this is the ideal state for you. What are the gaps from a skill set standpoint, from an experience standpoint, that you have versus your current state? And then let's map out the journey or the building blocks that take you from this current state to this ideal state. Again, a very simple framework, but one that you can apply when it comes to people leadership and when it comes to solving for customers and product as well.
Yeah, I can't agree with you anymore. A lot of our interview process, when we're hiring new people or even working with contractors, is really understanding more about them, who they are, their pains, their needs, their wants, and how we can assist them to get to where they want to be in their lives, more holistically rather than just maybe career. Because I find that also career-wise, people don't really know what's even possible. But we try to facilitate an environment where they can really look forward to working towards something which is going to be more impactful for them personally, be it with their family, their kids, their loved ones, their time off that they want, or even one of our latest hires is amazing because there's just a thirst for knowledge. So they just teach me, teach me, teach me. And that is the huge driver rather than any particular goal of like, oh, I want to get X amount of money or X amount of that. It's just amazing to watch as soon as you can figure it out. But the challenge of that is as well as getting the truth, right? The truth of what people actually think is their own truth as well. All right, I'm gonna try not to digress too much because we are rapidly running out of time, and I do want to kind of push forward, and I appreciate those sorts of different things, and I also appreciate that there's probably a whole lot of different other bits that are absolutely necessary to get into the role where you are now. Let's talk about how it happens, though. Like what we're at Pipedrive, we're the chief product officer, and then all of a sudden, from what I can see, there's a new entry on LinkedIn that says, "All right, Lodgify CEO." So, tell me whatever you think might be most valuable for people to understand how to plot that journey, if it's deliberate or not, or with luck,
Yes.
or if you could help us with that, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it starts with self-awareness, right? It starts with this understanding of, as best as you can, really trying to understand what are the types of roles. It doesn't have to be title, but the types of roles that you want to get into, the environments, the ingredients that they have to have to make it something that you're going to be passionate about. And then being very vocal and public about that with folks. And so, from the moment I realized, hey, I want to get to a CEO type role, a GM role, or executive role, I was very kind of public about that with my mentors, with my managers, with folks outside the company I was working at to kind of to network. And
So
so
you're actually saying I want to be a CEO.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. The kind of this is what I want to do, and so you have to let it be known because then people can let you know about opportunities that they see as a fit. And so this Lodgify opportunity came to me, and it came to me from my network. It was on LinkedIn, and it was like, hey, we've heard some great things about you. And at first, I was a bit skeptical because you never know about CEO opportunities that come your way on LinkedIn and how legitimate they may be. And it sounded a little bit too good to be true at first. I had a number of questions that I wanted to understand from the current CEO at the time, our former CEO and co-founder Dennis. But
But
then,
particularly as it wasn't, and it's a new vertical that you're now approaching. So I would have known a lot more about where the perception of Logify and where they sit in the market than what you were doing. So you're coming in and you're like, what is this?
exactly, exactly, yeah. So I think, going back to your question, it's the self-awareness. And again, self-awareness is never a complete practice and never complete, right? It's just you're always reflecting, always understanding what do you know about yourself and kind of what you like and don't like at that point in your life.
Mm.
So that you can point to your kind of focus to those types of opportunities, and then being very vocal and public about that with folks that you believe come across those opportunities, whether it's folks that are in those roles today or folks that can get you those roles. That's incredibly important.
Wow. It's like I don't know if you've ever watched or read the Secret, the book, like intentionality and that sort of thing, which is something it's half and half. But I'll tell you a story which I think will you'll empathize with and be like, yeah, that's what I mean. Because a good friend of mine was a ski patroller, travels to Canada during the winters and during the Canadian summers would come to Australia, and then we'd go and visit her up in the mountains, and she'd take us out, and it'd be great because she knew all the best runs and everything you meant to do. But we went up and it was her birthday, maybe a 40th birthday. And being a ski patroller, she knows everyone, but no one knows that it's her birthday. So in the morning, she gets to kind of the office where everybody is, and literally everybody she sees, she's like, "Hey, good morning, it's my birthday. Hey, good morning, it's my birthday. Hey, good morning, it's my birthday." And like, "Oh, what are you gonna do?" "Well, I'm gonna do a meeting at the pub and stuff after work." Anyways, we get to the pub at the end of the day. There's like 200 people there, right? Like it's just going mental. And it was because she just told people. There was no secret to it. It was like literally when people are like sad that no one knows about my birthday, they don't care. Well, did you tell them? Like, are you expecting for Facebook to like, they tell everybody. And then if they don't do anything, cool, all right, you can be a bit sad about it. But I think that vocalizing and telling people gives them the opportunity to be of service to you and to help you in that journey. But if you don't say anything, there's absolutely zero chance of anything happening.
It's so true. It's so true. It's incredibly important. And look, you don't have to know the specific title, right? And so to your point, like sometimes we don't know like, hey, this is the specific title or role that we want, but we know what are the things that have to be true in the company or the role or the size of the organization that will be that's best conducive to where you get fired up. Even sharing that to kind of say, hey, these are the types of environments I'm looking for. These are the types of companies I'm looking for. These are the types of roles I'm looking for. Even if it's not specific titles, is incredibly helpful, and definitely encourage your viewers to make that be known.
I love it. Cool. So, as we get towards the end, and I think that Lodgify will kind of sell itself through seeing who you are, Shaun, and where your vision sits, and what some of your thoughts are in general. I know that you've been very purposeful when you've joined the company to really understand the products, get to know the industry, go and talk to what was it? Meeting all the property managers and sitting down and having a chat and about what's going to be important and figuring out the path and the plan for what's coming next. And I think you've already answered also a lot of your philosophy around, David versus Goliath, leading with empathy, a design mindset, and that sort of thing. So peeling things back to be able to build them in a way that leads in that way. I just don't know if there's anything in particular we need to really ask about that, because we'll see. But is there anything that you want to share that I'm kind of maybe missing out on?
I think the only other piece to add, Bart, and you mentioned Jeff Bezos' name earlier on, who obviously has done incredible things. And one of the quotes that I love from Bezos that is a big part of how we're thinking about things at Lodgify is, he shared early on when he was leading Amazon that oftentimes there's focus on what is changing around us, especially now, right? With AI and technology and everything going on related to that. And his point was that what's actually the better question to ask and to focus in on is what is not changing. Because when you focus on what is not changing, that's where you can build a durable product and a durable business. And so for us and what we're doing at Lodgify is focusing on what is not changing. And if you think about that, the needs of property owners and property managers in the long tail segment of the market haven't changed in the last 10 years and
Mm.
aren't going to change in the next 10 years. Right. And all these customer chats that I do, I always ask the same two questions. What do you love about hosting and what do you like the least? And it's oftentimes the same things that were there several years ago, right? They love the experience that they can leave their guests with. They love making money. They love, the flexibility and independence that it can give them. What do they not love? All the things that get in the way of that, the admin, the manual times, the kind of the issues, and things like that. And so we are all about ensuring that hosts can experience more of that good stuff and the things that were there 10 years ago and will be there from 10 years from now, and less of the things that get in their way.
I love it. Look, I'm really looking forward to sharing your journey, seeing what you get up to. It's I think it's a real privilege actually to be getting into a role like you are, because there are many property management system companies out there, but there are very few that have got as much tenure as Lodgify, as much presence as Lodgify. So you're jumping into something which is already very well regarded, which is incredible and really good. So it's going to be great to have some of your input, your philosophy, and really your empathy actually joining. So I'm actually really excited to see what happens next and to follow along. And I'm sure that a lot of people will do as well. So what we'll do is we'll check in and maybe 12 months, maybe 6 months. We'll kind of see and we'll see where you're at and what you've learned. And I'm sure there's other topics that we can tackle along the way if we need to. But look, Shaun, I think I'm going to wrap us up there. I think it's been a really cool insight into a little bit into who you are. Hopefully, some people have had some ideas as to how to maybe change things up and maybe learn how to be a CEO themselves. Are there any final tips or thoughts you'd like to leave everyone with?
I think, look, as a part of my own personal purpose and this kind of David versus Goliath and leveling the uneven playing field that we can sometimes be on, my personal purpose is to use my platform to help even that out. And so I'd encourage anybody that's listening that, wants to learn more about how I've gotten to where I've gotten to, or lessons learned on kind of refining your purpose over time. Happy to help out. I want to use the platform that I have to help others and to coach as much as I can. And so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can email me, shaun.shirazian@lodgify.com, and I'd be more than happy to help out in any way I can.
There you go. Email address straight into the CEO. I'm sure the bots are going to get it. You're cooked. You're cooked, my friend. Shaun, absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you taking the time. Now, folks, if you are tuned in to the podcast on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit that like button, the subscribe button. There's quite a few of you that are watching that haven't hit the button yet. It does make a massive difference to us. I know I say it every single week, but I say it because it's important. If you're tuned in on Apple, on Spotify, leave us a review. The 5 stars, all the lot. It does make a huge difference. Shaun, thank you so much for taking the time out, for jumping in, giving this a good crack. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes next out of Lodgify. Hopefully, I'll catch you somewhere very soon. I wish you a very good morning and a good day.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bart. Appreciate it.
Take care.